Hi.
Hi, Karen here from Media Careers, and I'm here with Phil Vettel, the dining critic for the Chicago Tribune. Hey, Phil.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Phil's been with the Tribune Company for a long time. He's started with the company in the late 70s. That would be the 1970s. And he's been the restaurant critic since the late 80s, since 89. He's got a wife and two sons, and they sometimes accompany Phil on his culinary ventures. For more than 30 years, as I just said, Phil's been at the Tribune. So again, welcome, Phil. So glad.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad that you're here. How's the Corona coaster treating you?
It's treating me all right. The people I covered hasn't been treating them very well at all. I'm pretty sequestered these days, so I'm as you know, kind of in the demographic where I really shouldn't be taking any more risks than I have to. So I'm not.
Good.
And indoor dining hasn't really been much of a subject to cover for the last 6 months.
Yeah. So how have you, you still need to put out something. So how are you covering restaurants given the nature of the crazy business environment?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been doing stories on the restaurants advocating for more federal help. I've done stories on the payroll protection program and how it doesn't work for restaurants. And I've been chronicling different restaurants as they close, unfortunately, and as some of them pivot and adjust their business models in such a way that they can keep their heads above water.
How is it that you would decide on what restaurants to write about?
Well, the easy answer is restaurants that were compelling to me for one reason or another. The longer answer is that I tried for some balance. I tried to have a range of price ranges of restaurants I was reviewing, so I wasn't simply the reviewer of the rich and famous. And I strove for some ethnic balance in the types of restaurants and the types of cuisines I was going, and to the extent I could, geographic balance, getting out to the suburbs, getting out of River North and out of Fulton Market to the extent you can. And unfortunately, hot restaurant neighborhoods are hot restaurant neighborhoods for a reason.
Right.
That's where the interesting restaurants are. So you do find yourself in hitting the same streets a lot, but you try to keep it moving. Mm-hmm. And I try to balance between the new restaurants, which are the ones people want to hear about because they don't know anything about them, and then the don't forget about me 10-year-old or older restaurants that occasionally want to check back and see how they're doing.
Are you contacted by a lot of restaurants when they change their menus or they have something new going on?
Yeah, they're not shy.
Okay, very good. What got you into doing restaurants? Because before this, you were not.
Nope. When I started in 1979, the Chicago Tribune had a suburban paper, a separate suburban product called Suburban Trib. And that was distributed within the Trib, physically inside the Tribune, if you're a suburban subscriber. And we covered DuPage County. I was principally in DuPage County, although we had 10 different zoned copies of the of Suburban Trib. And I started there, and it was in a way, it was very much like working on a small paper, because even though we were owned by this big honking company, we had our own ad staff and our own production staff and our own editors and et cetera. And so we did things more or less our way. And if you start off at a small paper, which is how most people ought to, you find yourself, you can do just about any story you want to if you're willing to do the work and get in there. So when they hired me, they looked and saw that I had worked at a restaurant during, to pay my way through college. And they said, oh, well, maybe you could write restaurant reviews, because everybody, we pitch in, about 5-6 different people do them. And so that's when I got to do my first ones, really. On the sidelight, the other thing is they saw I once played in a band, and they said, oh, maybe you could do music reviews. So I got to do a little of that too. But the restaurant review thing kind of stuck for me. And then eventually I was brought downtown and which was a nice promotion for me. And I didn't have the critic job or anything like that, but I would help out in general features and occasionally pinch hit some work for the restaurant critic at the time. We used to have these dining guides twice a year where we'd have little capsule reviews of all these things. And the critic would look and say, this listing, we have hardly any German restaurants. So they'd give me $400 and say, go get 10 get capsules of German restaurants. And so for 2 weeks, I would eat nothing but German food and write all these things up. So in the fullness of time, when they decided to shuffle people around and the current restaurant critic wanted to do something else, I was called in and they handed me the job.
What when you say $400 and I eat German food for 2 weeks, that's not always your process. Like I'd read that you sometimes bring your family along to sample sample things at restaurants. And so how does that work? I once upon a time when I was at Pioneer Press and Virginia Gerst was reviewing restaurants, I would go along with her and call her Aunt Ginny, and she'd feed us. And the only deal was she got to try our food. So I was wondering if it was a little bit like that.
It's exactly like that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. I would bring friends and occasionally family. I should point out that little line in my bio is really old. that my son, my younger son is now 32 as of yesterday, and the older boy is 33 and has a child. And lives in Houston. So he doesn't really come with me on my reviews anymore. But my wife and friends and during the week, usually colleagues, will join me. And yes, it's exactly like that. You get to go out to dinner with me, but I pick the restaurant, I decide what we're going to order, and I eat off your plate. Sure. And that's going to be it's going to be real interesting to see how I arrange that post-COVID when I start going off, because here's a phrase you're not going to hear for 5 years. Want a bite of my sandwich? Yeah, exactly. No, you're never going to hear that again. Mm-hmm. I'll cut you off a little piece and I'll send it to you, but on a plate, and on this plate that I haven't touched, and then I'm just going to slide it over here, and then back off while you eat it and enjoy it. Well, when you get back into that zone again, if you're making a list, put me on the list of people to go with you, because I'm up for that and I like to explore. So all right. I'd love to do that with you. So did you get a job with the Tribune straight out of Eastern Illinois University? Yes. Ah, okay. I was very lucky in that regard. On two levels. One, there was someone on the on Suburban Trib staff who was an Eastern graduate, and as a loyal alum, she always alerted the head of the journalism department when there was an opening, and so they always knew. And the other fortunate bit is that my timing was such that I used the summer semester of '79 to finish up my degree. Ah, okay. So when the opening came, and it was sometime in August of '79, there weren't a whole lot of graduating seniors hanging around the journalism office. And so I was the one they sent up for the job. Okay. And then the third fortunate thing is that despite my incredibly spotty resume, they required us to take a test. We had to lay out a page, we had to size some pictures, we had to write a couple of headlines. We had to edit a couple of freelance stories. And I was used to doing all that. Mm-hmm. And I actually knew the word processing system that they had, because it was the one that we had at Eastern. Ah. So I passed. I think that's a fantastic test they gave you. I mean, if it all shut down and people couldn't get into work, Phil could lay it out. Phil could size the pictures. Phil could. Once upon a time, I could. Yeah. The technology has gone to the point that I haven't laid out a page in a long time, and that would be quite a challenge to move these blocks of copy around with the, back then I used to I used to wax up the thing. I used to wax up the printouts and physically paste it on the layout to be photographed later.
Back when the vocabulary was key lines and paste ups. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Back when I had the no longer useful skill of being able to use an X-Acto knife to turn a comma into a period. Because if you had to trim something for size, you often found that a sentence would work without the clause at the end.
Mhm.
So you take that off and that gets you 2 lines, but now you've got a comma and one little click of the X-Acto knife and that comma is now a period and your paragraph is over and you save the space.
That's wild. That's funny.
It's so useless now.
Yes, but I can relate. And some older journalists and designers can relate as well. I
Mhm.
know. So, what attracted you to journalism?
I always liked writing, and I always liked the idea that your name is on your work. I mean, there are so many jobs, and there are very fulfilling jobs, and all the rest of it, and in which you contribute, you do anything, but at the end of the day, if I've got a story and it goes out, my name is on it, and that had great appeal to me. That I knew what I was doing, and that people, the ones who cared, knew what I was doing, and also the the idea of deadlines really appealed to me.
Mhm.
Not because I work well under deadline,
Mhm.
but that if it were not for deadlines, I would never have written anything.
Yeah.
So I need that hot breath on the back of my neck to finish.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're like messing with it and you're looking at it and you're looking at it, and then you realize, at 5 o'clock, I have to hit send no matter what.
Mhm.
And then you can live with it. You can live with the imperfection, or you can resolve to do better. But at some point, there's an end to it. I can't imagine writing a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would be at it for years.
Yeah.
It'd be like,
You didn't have the hot breath breathing down your neck.
it would be the Sagrada Familia of books. Just
Mhm.
this massive project that took centuries and was never ever finished.
You'd be one of many. There's a lot of would-be novelists and book writers, authors who haven't finished their work. Based on you being a journalist for such a long time, for so many years, what is it that you feel you owe your readers? You talked about putting your byline on it, and that's a stamp of I wrote this and I stand by it. But
Yeah,
aside from that, what do you think you owe your readers?
the truth.
Yeah.
They have to, especially when you're being evaluative. They have to know that this is what I believe, and I'm not shading what I believe because the chef is a really nice person, or shading it because the chef isn't a very nice person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't spend a whole lot of time finding out which chefs are nice and which ones are naughty, because I don't want that in my head anyway.
Right.
And just consistency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's I take it as a compliment when some readers say, "I knew you would hate this thing," because you're always, and I learned that from. I mean, I shared cubicle space, not actually desks, but in the same vicinity as Gene Siskel for a long time, and I read all his stuff religiously, and I developed my own. I could tell that if he really liked a Woody Allen film, that maybe I might not necessarily like it, because he adored Woody Allen and almost everything he did back then. And then it'd be somebody else that if he didn't like it so much, yeah, there might be some hope, because he doesn't seem to like that author's work very much. And these are not flaws as far as I'm concerned. That there's just an insight to the way the critic thinks, and it's very, very valuable, because that's what you want out of a critic anyway. You want to be able to read what's said and be able to make a decision reliably based on that. Unlike art critics or architecture critics, or my field is telling people about stuff that they are likely to go and do.
Yeah.
And so I'm writing, I'm writing to the person who has $75, and that's pretty much what that person uses for entertainment for the month. And that's the person has to know that if I tell them that your $75 will be spent well there, they can rely on that.
Mm-hmm. What is it you think would surprise people about the process, about the work that you do?
I've mentioned it before, but people are still kind of surprised that I visit a place 3 or 4 times before I write it up. I don't always, but that's usually the goal I set for myself. And and it still amazes me to this day because it's been so consistent. So some people are I always bump into people and they say, so the restaurant calls you and gives you free meals, so you go in? I said, no. I pick the restaurant. I don't tell them I'm coming. I pay for everything. Mm-hmm. And then the paper pays me. I mean, I'm not running a charity here, but yes, but no, the restaurant gets its money and they don't get to say when I'm coming in and like that.
2 years ago, you outed yourself, so to speak,
yes,
as the critic, by having yourself photographed and writing a piece about why you were doing it. And I think people would be surprised as to why you outed yourself. So can you talk about that?
Sure. This was August of 18 when we did it officially, but this had been a conversation I've been having with my editors for several months prior. And I became more and more aware that I was inadvertently contributing to a two-class system of restaurants. They were the restaurants that knew who I was over the years. They figured it out. It's not hard, particularly if you're a restaurant with connections and resources and things like that. And I know years ago being able to, can you spot Phil was one of the questions on an interview if you wanted to be a host or something like that.
Wow.
I'm sure there were other people they wanted you to recognize as well, but, do you know who this is? Would you recognize that person? And there were people, so there were restaurants that I couldn't walk into a Rich Melman restaurant even 4 years ago and have any hope of being anonymous, unless it was one of his far-flung suburban spots. But no, I would be made as soon as I hit the door. I remember going to a John Hogan restaurant, and I swear I was made as I was parking, giving the keys to the valet. My wife and I get out of the car and look into that. I'm looking big glass window, looking into the restaurant, and there's somebody by the host stand, and he looks out the window, and he does a 180 and goes shooting toward the kitchen. I said, there's only one reason a host is running into the kitchen. He needs to tell the chef something. So I said, all right, it's over. It's over. I haven't gotten indoors, and it's over. And then there were other restaurants that didn't have these connections or weren't as shrewd, and they had no idea. And I gave as an example, within a week, I walked into one restaurant, and they didn't know me from a hole in the ground. And I got a terrible table, way in, East Lansing kind of thing. And I got a indifferent waiter, and things were slow and disjointed and not very good. Mm-hmm. And a few days later, I went into the latest lettuce entertaining place. I think at the time it was Abba. And I walked in there. I got there early because they couldn't get a reservation. So I went to put my name in at the host stand, and they initially quoted about a 90-minute wait, which I knew was going to happen. So I went to the bar, and I was 3 sips into my first drink when I got a tap on the shoulder, and a table had magically opened up for me, and service was. And so it was. I started thinking, now, is it fair for me to ding the first restaurant for making mistakes that the second restaurant could not possibly have made because they knew?
Right.
And I could not find a way to make the second group of restaurants forget what I looked like. So all I could do is figuratively raise the veil and let everybody see. And then it was, okay, now nobody has an excuse. Now now I've leveled the playing field. Here's the guy. Right. And you sit me in the far table to your
They can Google you, find a picture of you. and know what you look like. So everybody, like you said,
right.
Even playing field.
Right. And even back then, I mean, in 2018, if you looked under my name for Google Images, you got nothing.
Oh, I know that because I looked. Yeah,
you got a couple of people that look like me, and a picture of my 32-year-old son as a 13-year-old holding up sarcastically a kiddie plate of pancakes where they had used pineapple to draw a smiley face on it. And this is what they served him when he was 14. He did not. And you find that picture, but you couldn't find me. So I don't know if that's because I was that shrewd or that good at it, or because the restaurants who managed to get snapshots of me weren't about to share it with anybody.
Yeah. What do you like to eat at home?
Up until 6 months ago, what I liked to eat at home was very, very simple stuff because I was eating all this rich stuff out there. So I would kind of keep things easy. In COVID times, I'm able to indulge myself a little bit more, but I'm up to my ears in vegetables. It was a good crop in the backyard this year. So I have been forcing myself to eat 2 tomatoes a day, a handful of green beans a day, because we spent all this time growing this stuff, and I've got to eat it now, because otherwise it's going to go bad. So I've been doing a lot of witch's brew vegetable sautés, where I just take the 3 vegetables I've been holding on to the longest, and in they go in a pan with a little olive oil and maybe some za'atar seasoning, and I just chase it around for a while, find a protein, and that's dinner.
Your bio also said you made a mean egg salad sandwich. So
yes, that was an inside joke.
Oh, really?
Because I like an egg salad sandwich, but nobody else in my household back then would eat my egg salad sandwich. My boys at that time, teenagers, would be in open rebellion when I try to make egg salad, especially in the springtime, because that's what you do with your Easter eggs when you're done having them be Easter eggs.
Yeah.
When 2 days after Easter, what you have is a whole bunch of funny-looking hard-boiled eggs. Mm-hmm. So I'd mash them up and I'd make egg salad and said, okay, we can have egg salad sandwiches. And they absolutely would never do it.
So it was a message to them. My egg salad sandwiches are very good, and you do not appreciate them.
Exactly. To this day, they'll eat a deviled egg and they won't eat my egg salad. I say, it's the only difference is a fork, is that somebody did this with a fork.
Is there ever been any moments in your career, be it even before you became the restaurant critic or since then, where you said to yourself, I love my job. This is why I do this work?
Yeah, pretty much every day.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I look at this, I would do this job, and there'd be some days when I would just have to try to tell myself not to laugh out loud that I was drawing a salary to go to the best restaurants in Chicago and sometimes in other countries. And this was my job. They paid me to do this. And I'm thinking, this is the best thing ever.
Cool.
And yeah, and I still feel that way.
Before you retire, whenever that might be, is there any other projects or things you want to try out before you hang it up?
I don't think so. Fortunately, social media lets me give full voice to my political leanings, and so I don't feel the need to explore that very much. And I can even throw in I can get a little sports chats and throw my 2 cents in that way. So no, I've always had a total inability to see past the job I was doing to imagine what I wanted to do next. I never imagined what I wanted to do next. Whatever I was doing, that's as long as I was happy doing it, that's what I was doing.
Would that go for any other profession as well? You can't see yourself in any other profession. There's nothing you would try just to try it?
No, at this point, no, I don't think so. I'd probably, I'd probably just go join a bar band somewhere, see if I could still do that. Yeah, right. I became a grandfather last year, so when when I'm not doing this anymore, maybe I'll see how good a grandpa I can be.
There you go. You mentioned boy band, so You're musical. Do you play an instrument or do you sing?
Yeah, said bar bands, by the way. I'm not.
Bar bands. I heard boy bands. Okay,
yeah, my choreography is not up to the challenge. No, I stopped going to. I took a year off from college to join a band because I wanted thought it'd be fun, get it out of my system. I could always sing, and that's why they wanted me in the band. And I could fake keyboards just well enough to hold my own, and so that's what we did. And it was fun. Did it for about a year, and it was. I mean, the very first gig we played was at this private party, and this cute blonde kept hanging around my keyboard and talked to me afterwards, and we made a date to meet for lunch later. And I thought, this is great. This is what being in a bar band is all about, And so we had lunch and et cetera, and I married her, and it's been 40 years, and that's so.
So that worked out.
It worked out. It just had the one. I had the one groupie. That's I didn't. I still couldn't think beyond what I was doing right then and there. And so I have that little side, that little segue out of college and back into meeting my wife for 40 years now.
That's fantastic. What advice would you have for those looking to get involved in the journalism industry these days?
Well, first thing I'd say is don't wait for the perfect job to start creating. Just get out there and create, whether you're just talking to yourself on your computer or doing, just because the traditional career paths are virtually closed. The idea that you're going to work at a college paper and then you're going to start at a small paper and move them to bigger, the papers are falling away, and what is keeping people in the business is the ability to not to go the traditional way, to find new paths to express themselves and to grasp technology. You have to be so flexible and quick in doing technology these days. Some of the people that have joined my team in the last couple of years, I feel like I'm like old man guy going, "You're doing what?"
Yeah.
And it's changing so incredibly rapidly. The what people can do now with the technology. In another few years, you're going to need to do a whole other. It's going to be done a different way, and we'll always need newsmen, and we'll always need storytellers, and we'll always need people that can show other people the world, maybe in ways they hadn't taken looks at them before. I just don't know in what way you'll be delivering them. So you have to be open to every possible way of doing it. Probably telepathy in another 20 years. I'll just project ideas into somebody else's cranium. Could happen. If you told me, if I told you 20 years ago what we'd be doing today, it'd be just as preposterous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I bet you'd have a handheld device that would produce the newspaper, put the newspaper right on there.
Right.
You could read the newspaper on something in your palm and it not be on paper.
Right. And do everything else too. Because while you're doing that, you might take a phone call, or you might answer a different message, or you might order a pizza, or you might close on your condo sale. I mean, it's just right. And the last 6 months, as horrible as they've been, have made that more and more obvious. The things we can do sitting with a device, with a computer, and that's how we're going to be doing everything.
Yep. Is there anything else you could think of that we should talk about that you would like the media consuming public to know more about you or journalism?
I would start by saying journalism really needs your support right about now. if you value quality journalism, you really should support it, because quality journalism is no longer the super moneymaker it once was. At some point, the people, the market, are going to have to decide what kind of journalism they want, and it's based on what kind of journalism they pay for. And the whole abstract version of a paper that shows up on your porch for pennies a day, and it's pretty much all subsidized by display ads and classified ads. That model is completely and utterly broken, and everything's broken out what you're willing to pay for. I was just, and because we in journalism, we don't control the technology in which we present our product, and that's a big thing. So you have and so you have people who don't want to pay for newspaper subscriptions or online subscriptions, but are paying $6 a month for a Jay-Z ringtone.
Yeah. Right.
The difference being they control that technology, and we don't. They can make it an either or thing. You get it or you don't get it. And we can, and we may have been shooting ourselves in the foot all these last years by making everything free, and the idea that the sheer numbers would pay for themselves. And that's really not working out very well.
Right.
And the other thing is keep listening. And particularly in the industry I cover, keep supporting your restaurants who are in dire need of a helping hand. And if you're nervous about dining indoors, and why wouldn't you be, then do some carry out or whatever you can do.
Right. Any shout outs you want to make to your editors or to your wife or anybody else?
Yeah, my boss. Sorry the story's late. I've been doing this.
Thank you, Phil.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming out.
Well, this was fun.
All right. We're out.